What's up, YouTube? Hey, I'm sure you saw the last video here with Jack Berstein, but we wanted to go even deeper on like the numbers and the backstory because it's hard to capture that in like a shorter YouTube video, so it was worth an encore. Jack, thanks for spending some extra time with us here today. We want the audience to get to know you a little bit more. You're a serial entrepreneur. You have lots of different skill sets. You've built and sold businesses, and now your main focus and passion is real estate. Tell us a little bit about yourself here. We're really excited to find out more about how this $2 million property that we're in that was worth $3 million, how this all came about, why the numbers made sense to you as a real estate investor, as a house hack. But first of all, let's just get started. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You're from the area. So right now we're in Oakville, Ontario, one of the nicest postal codes in the province. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing here and, what you got exposed to when you were younger.
Yeah, so, fantastic area to grow up in. I grew up in a lower income pocket of it. I came from a family that did not have financial means whatsoever. But one of the best things about living in an area like this is some of the people that you meet and you commingle with, you get to see the finer things in life. And a lot of my friends, came from super wealthy families, even though I didn't. And what it did is it opened up my eyes to the possibilities of working hard. And most importantly, the mindset that their parents were in and why they ended up being successful and why they ended up, doing the things that they did. And from a young age, it really instilled drive in me. It's probably what led me back to being able to be in the area in the part that I always wanted to be in.
Yeah, so a lot of work ethic, a lot of drive, probably some entrepreneurs that you have, parents that you got to hang around with as well. So,
well, the biggest thing was the common denominator, right? So every single one of them had some sort of business or active income that they made money in. And then the one thing I always noticed was they all bought properties after. So all the money ended up flowing back in real estate, and that's really what made me spark, okay, you know what? If that's a common denominator between them all, it's probably one of the keys to success that's helped them get to where they are.
Very cool. And you've got some interesting past. You were, tell us a little bit about your athletic background. I've got an athletic background as well. Yours is probably cooler than mine. So I was in an amateur sport that got very little attention, but what did you do here when you were younger?
Yes, when I was 16 to the age of 24, 25, I was, chasing kind of the professional snowboarder route and competing at a national and international level and, trying to work towards the Olympics and some things like that, and was fortunate enough to be able to travel the world for a long time and had some of the biggest snowboard sponsors and brands backing me. But, once I transitioned that out of business, I found that being a super competitive athlete, there's a lot of transitional skills that help you in business and sales, which is where I transitioned into.
Yes. No, they're super transitional, and I think people don't underestimate when people have some of those backgrounds, whether it's harder upbringing or athletic background, it's very transferable into the business world for sure. All right, cool. So Jack, this isn't your first time at the rodeo here. This is what deal you're working on right now? How many properties do you own?
So I'm around 8 properties now. This, is basically my 8th property and kind of my last project for the year, but I've had 5 or 6 different active projects this year.
Yeah, and your first property was kind of a house hack like this as well, right? So you're able to get in, you did a conversion, so that means when you take a regular home and you put 2 units into it. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think there's some distinctions here that the listeners need to see that, if you're looking for opportunity, if you look often enough and turn over enough rocks, you'll find it.
Yeah, that was exactly it. So, 6 or 7 years ago when I was at the point where I was interested in real estate, but I didn't have the resources that I do now, and I wanted to get my foot into the market.
It's tough when you're in your mid-20s, right? Early 20s.
Exactly. So, I came up with this plan basically of how can I find a property and get some auxiliary income to basically help offset the carrying cost for the property so that it doesn't impede my lifestyle. As anybody who's hearing this that's in their early 20s or mid-20s, it's all about enjoying time with your friends and kind of really enjoying your 20s before life gets a little bit more serious on the back end. So what I did was I looked for a specific kind of house that I could do a duplex conversion on that would be relatively simple for my first property and that would cover about 50 to 60% of my carrying costs on that property. And I looked for about 6 months and I found a power of attorney sale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a super cool opportunity. And I basically jumped on the property. I went in with almost no experience, barely enough resources to scrape by, and then had to use creative financing and some other things to basically get the rentals done.
Wow.
But I knew I was going to be able to do it, and I put myself in a position where I had to get it done.
Sometimes no option is the best option when your back is up against the wall. And the first one is typically the hardest because you're just going through such a big learning curve, right? I remember my first properties, I was learning from Mike Holmes on TV. That was about the extent of my renovation experience. So you're going through all these different things. Fortunately, that wasn't like a crazy, some people spent $200,000 on their duplex conversions. I think yours was a pretty reasonable one. You just literally had to make some changes, and like a lot of the harder things were already there, like the windows and doors and things of that nature.
Yeah, it was a huge learning curve for me. I went into that project thinking it was going to be a $15,000, $20,000 duplex conversion. And in reality, that's obviously not the case. I think I ended up finishing around $50,000, which was actually reasonable back then to do it. Mm-hmm. And I learned the hard way that you need permits to do construction. So I just started going and converting this place. And, of course, the city shows up, and it put me in line very quick and taught me structure of basically real estate development and kind of renovations and things like that. But the point is that I kind of threw myself in there and just took action. And because I took action, it put me on a different journey and a different trajectory.
Yes. So you held on to that one. How long did you live there for? You owned that one for 5-6 years?
Yeah, about 5.5 years. And then...
and what made you want to sell, though?
Yeah, so around January of 2022, I kind of saw a lot of key indicators in the market that, the yield curve was inverting in debt markets a bunch of times. The markets were going crazy and things seemed pretty... unsustainable and frothy, to say the least. So for me, that was enough time to kind of capture the equity in the sale. And then, lo and behold, once I executed the sale, the market had basically turned.
Yeah, I was going to say, you executed pretty much perfectly. You sold peak market, and I think literally within weeks of that, things started trailing off a bit.
Yeah, my neighbor sold their house right after, and I think they got like 150 or 200 grand less than I did. So at that point, I made the strategic decision to basically go rent for 6, 7, 8 months. And then as the market went down, I would basically try to find a property and execute on that, closer to the bottom. I'm a big believer in not timing markets, but, if you can sell at some point close to the top and buy someplace close to the bottom, that's good enough for me. I don't need to be any more greedy.
Now, for people that are sitting on a bunch of cash right now, what did you do when you were kind of waiting and renting? Was your money just sitting in the bank, or did you put it to work a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a big believer in always having your money churning, especially in this year. Inflation was eating your money like crazy. So I don't want to have dollars just sitting in the bank, especially if it's a good size sum of cash. So what I did was I partnered up with someone who had a MIC, which is a mortgage investment corporation. And what they did is they actually private lent my money for me on 3 or 4 different deals where I was the sole mortgager basically on those deals.
So first position mortgage, always the best position to be in.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's not like you're making a ton of money on it, but at least you weren't losing to inflation. It's probably going to end up being a wash. But
yeah, and it was a great learning experience, right? You really learn the power of getting to play bank. It's kind of like, Monopoly or some of the other board games where you see the real estate aspect, but when you actually get to play bank on the other side, you see the power of actually lending and, some of the opportunities it can also bring.
Yeah, typically you make the terms, not the not the person who needs the money, for sure. So, and I want people here that are listening and watching to this to really understand that, for Jack to purchase this property that we're in, this was not just like a quick decision. This was like 5 years in the making. You're a very intentional person. I've got to spend some time in your house, in your office, seeing your vision board, your goal board. All the pieces were already up there. You just had to go put in the time, effort, because you were already manifesting this 5 years ago. So tell us a little bit about this deal specifically. You wanted to be in this area. You went and saw how many properties again?
Yeah, almost 60 properties over a term of 3 or 4 months. So you're right, it was very intentional. Yeah, it was a lot of house showings. My poor real estate agent.
Cool. And then you guys were did you have a price point you were shopping within?
Yeah, so the price point, as it does basically with interest rates, is my price point started off here, and then as rates basically changed and the market was dropping, my purchasing power basically got diminished with every single rate hike. So what was originally like a 2.3 or 2.35 $1 million budget basically ended up coming down to 2 million because of the rate hikes. And I'm a big believer in using leverage as a tool, but not over leveraging. And I wanted to make sure that, I was still in the realms of realistic for loading on the house with debt.
So you guys found this property. I think you said as soon as you walked through it, you knew it was the one, but, tell us how the offers and stuff went and how how this all came together.
Yeah, so I walked through, and right away it kind of checked all the boxes off for me. It was in a fantastic location. It was close to the water. It was kind of in my dream location, as where I grew up and always wanted to end up. It had income potential from the other suites and things like
You
that.
got one over here, you got one back here,
Yeah,
or down here.
it's the best. So, and then obviously, it's a really comfortable home. I plan on, raising a family here and things like that as well too. So for the next chapter, kind of coming into my 30s, it was exactly what I was looking for. But basically, I came into the deal. It had been on the market for 60 days, and I came with basically a super low ball offer. It came in around like the 1.8 mark, and the property was listed at, I think, 2.35, almost 2.4. And within a split second, I was basically offer rejected. As one in sales does, you kind of play the game a bit, and we didn't respond back for a couple days, and they ended up coming back to us before we went back to them. And at that point, we knew that they were a motivated seller. We learned a little bit about the story, and we wanted.
In this price point, it's not like they're getting offers continuously. There is a certain kind of a buyer, a certain kind of a niche property, certain price point. So I think their net is kind of small, and I think it's actually good when people get an offer that they say, hey, that's a starting point. It's too low, but let's work together on this and see if we can meet in the middle.
That's the thing too, right? Like, you want it to be a win-win deal for everybody. So there was concessions I made on my side by like a quicker closing, being more favorable with showings and things like that, and then also helping them out with some other stuff that really allowed the deal to kind of happen. And why I was willing to go the extra mile in the deal was because I was buying a $3 million asset for essentially $2 million. So when you look at, some more challenges that you have basically on the financing side, incurring some more costs and some other expenses that come up doing a deal like this that you don't necessarily see, it's worthwhile doing it because of the equity you're gaining on the buy.
Yes. And how do you know that you're buying a $3 million property? Like, is this just, I know you're also getting your license too, but back then you had to rely on, was it like an appraisal that was done, or?
Yeah, so there was an appraisal report that was basically done at late 2021, so kind of cresting right into the big bull market of the beginning of this year, and it was about 2.85 million. And then when you kind of look at all the houses on the street, being surrounded by $4, $5, $6 million houses, and your house is half the value, those houses are only going to help bring the value of the property up. When you look at the lot size, the location, the proximity to the water, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, really good value for sure. And for people that are in smaller markets, and if you just can't relate, you got to be comfortable playing with the numbers in a market where just everything's more expensive, right? Like the entry level to get into a house around here, it's going to be like well over $1 million. So, but people want to be here just for the school districts and all kinds of different things too. Tell us about the renovations that you've done here, Jack, because it wasn't ready to go. Your vision was to have a couple of different auxiliary units in this property so that you can bring in extra cash flow. And because how many square feet is this property altogether?
Yeah, so it's about 4,400 square feet.
Yeah, way too much for one person. So how did you split that up, and then what did you spend in each unit?
Yeah, so the vision for the property all came together on the first walkthrough. So I'm a big believer in when you do your walkthroughs, you bring your contractors, you bring your power team, bring your experts in. We kind of laid out the vision, we looked at a lot of the plumbing, the electrical and things like that, and went with the path of least resistance for the renos. So the unit that we walked through, which is going to be the Airbnb suite or midterm rental, we did about 15 to 20,000 on that.
That's pretty good.
And then on the other unit, we had to do a bathroom for about 15,000. So all in all, we're about 35,000 in. But the best part about it is when you plan and you do things precisely, I had contractors ready outside the house when I walked up with the key for the first turn of the door, and they just jumped in and went at it.
Nice. Yeah, that's always the best thing. So if people here listening, so important, get your contractors lined up in advance, go in on one of your showing opportunities before you go close, that you can get your measurements, and they can go and buy material, and supply chain, all that sort of stuff is dealt with. So that is like the best sound to hear progress. They are making noise, cutting. If you want to see what one of the units looks like, go and check out our last video here where we actually give you a tour of the one short-term rental unit. But you guys got this done in like 3 weeks, which is awesome. Some other people would have taken 6 weeks to get it done.
Yeah, so for me, this was obviously a big project to undertake, but this was a vision that was made 5 years ago, and every move that got me here was extremely intentional to try to make this dream come true. I don't consider myself smarter than anybody else or, any special skill set that would say that's abnormal. Anybody can do what I did, but you just need to make a plan and be extremely intentional towards it, and most importantly, take action. And, being 5 or 6 years down the road of my investing journey, all the things that I kind of manifested that I planned for and that I took action on are now starting to come to fruition. But the biggest thing is that anybody can do what I did with this. I didn't do anything special. There was no handouts or anything else that kind of made it happen. It was just making an intentional plan and then executing over a longer time period.
Yeah, no, and just hearing the story about even your first one, like it's like, you know, figuring out the money and figuring out the renos and like learning curve everywhere. But you stack those skills and that knowledge base to be able to do things like this now on the regular for sure. So for people that haven't seen everything from the first video there, Jack, can you just give us like high level? So we know that you bought it for around 2 million or just over 2 million because you bought some furniture. Like what are your holding costs? I hate to even think about your land transfer that you would have paid, but so like holding costs, utilities, and then you're also getting some pretty good rents here. And I think your rents could actually go up, and with interest rates now hovering around that 6 or 6.5% range, when they come down, your number's going to be even better. You might be living here for free. So how cool would that be?
It'd be incredible. You know, obviously no one's going to complain with that. But yeah, I purchased a house for $2,030,000. I basically bought a $3 million asset for 33% less. My carrying costs roughly per month are around $10,000, and I have one unit which pays me $1,850 a month. The Airbnb suite, which conservatively I'll get around $3,000 to $3,500, you know, on the high end maybe $4,000, and then a family member who travels a lot that actually contributes towards a room that pays $1,350. So when I look at my own out of pocket, you know, it's about $3,000 or $4,000 a month, which, you know, is manageable for me and doesn't impede my lifestyle. But just going back to basically the buy and talking about the closing costs and some of the things like that, you know, it was pretty big. It was a little bit of a shock. I think my land transfer cost was something around $50,000. And with some other closing costs, it was almost $80,000 in total for everything.
Yeah, well, it's an investment, right? For sure. So, but compared to your last, like your first house hack that you lived in for 5 years, you were paying about the same amount of price for like 1/3 of the surface area, right? So now you got like over 3,000 square feet to yourself for about the same cost, and great area, great neighborhood.
Yeah, like a lot of people basically look at the dream of owning like a bigger luxury home or something like that, and it just seems so unachievable with house prices. And in reality, if you're very intentional about the property or product that you're looking for, you know, you can basically do it where you can still have your own privacy, all the luxuries of having a property like that, you know, without having to make sacrifices and still have the income. So yeah, it's just kind of the next level house hack, I would call it.
Well, cool, Jack. Any other messages for our audience, or like what's next for you now?
Yeah, I think the number one message to anybody is just like make a plan and then make sure to try to execute on that plan and have a long-term vision at the end of the road. How you necessarily get there isn't going to be the linear approach that you think it is. It's going to be more of a zigzag, but the whole point is that you get to the end of the road, right? I think next for me is kind of just growing my company, Burnstone Capital, and just acquiring more properties. There's a couple different divisions, things like that we're growing. But the biggest thing is taking advantage of the market right now, right? We have one of the biggest, you know, wealth shift opportunities for anybody basically in the real estate market. And it's how can we capitalize on that the most over the next couple of years?
There's a lot of capitulation in the market right now. I'm actually excited for the next like 6 to 12 months. Like a lot of people are afraid. They're either like freezing, fight, flight, or frozen, right? But you know, I'm actually like just loading up and just getting ready because there's going to be opportunities that we haven't seen, at least not in my generation. So they're coming up for sure.
Yeah, it's just about buckling down and just making sure, you know, you're not over leveraged and that basically you have some gunpowder ready to go and kind of seize those opportunities as they come up.
Very cool. Very cool. And you know, we might be doing some business together in the future. So Jack's coming to mentor other people and when it comes to real estate investing. So make sure that you guys are tuned into the channel. Make sure that you guys are following Jack. Like what's the best way for people to follow you there, Jack?
Yeah,
Instagram,
easiest thing's
Facebook?
probably Instagram, Burnstone Capital, at Burnstone Capital, I should say, or just go to my website, www.burnstonecapital.com. So
yeah, we'll link it all down below here, everybody. So
cool. Well, listen, thanks for having me, Corey.
Oh man, thanks for the amazing tour. Thanks for the offer to maybe crash here once in a while. So it's been great to see, you know, just what this is like in a more expensive price point than even I'm used to. So, you know, thanks, Jack, for the time and the tour and the interview. And hopefully people learn from this, right? That's the purpose of us shooting these videos and spending so much time on the channel, is so that people can take a version of what Jack here has done, that you can do it in your own life. You can house hack in any single city here in the world, really. So, but you got to have that ambition. You got to have those, you know, Jack talked about a vision. He's literally got printouts and pictures on his wall in his office that he walks by every single day. He sees it, it's going to become reality, right? So we can manifest in our lives whatever we want, but you got to have a plan. You got to be not afraid to execute on it, especially in these uncertain times, right? So thanks again there, everybody, for watching in. We'll see you in the next one. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment with your thoughts here on this house hack situation. So see you in the next video.